welcome back to Humanfluence. Look, we've been taught to see the brain as the ultimate creator of our thoughts, our identities, our entire consciousness. But what if I told you that's one of the biggest lies we've been sold? What if consciousness isn't some byproduct of brain chemistry, some accidental spark that happened to give rise to self-awareness? What if the brain isn't creating consciousness at all, but simply tuning into it, like a radio picking up a signal? We live in an empirical world obsessed with science, with proof and measurement, with this idea that if we can't explain something through brain scans or neural pathways, then it's not real. But here's the problem with that thinking. It's limiting. It's reducing the vastness of human experience to chemicals and electrical impulses, making us believe that who we are begins and ends in this lump of tissue inside our skulls. Think about it. If consciousness is just a product of the brain, then who are you when you're dreaming? When you're asleep, the brain is largely in a resting state, but something else is still there, having experiences, creating worlds, feeling emotion. And it is not just during sleep. People who have had near-death experiences, whose brains were flatlining, report seeing and feeling more clearly than ever before. How do you explain that? If the brain is dead, where is this consciousness coming from? Or take people who meditate deeply, those who've experienced altered states of consciousness. Many report a kind of transcendence, a feeling of being something beyond themselves, beyond their own minds. That's not something that a collection of neurons should be able to create. It's something they're connecting to. So maybe consciousness isn't generated by the brain. Maybe it is something the brain tunes into, something it filters, shapes, and translates into the personal experiences we know as me and I. Here's a different way to look at it. Think of your brain as a receiver, like a radio or a TV. The signal, the source, is coming from somewhere else, something beyond the physical, beyond the tangible. The brain is simply the device that translates that signal into our unique individual experiences. It interprets consciousness, doesn't create it. Let's go deeper with that analogy. Imagine a radio. When you're tuned to a specific frequency, it picks up a station, music or voices, but the music doesn't originate from the radio. If the radio breaks, the music isn't gone, the signal is still there. And that's what we're talking about here. If your brain is damaged, altered, or even destroyed, consciousness doesn't disappear. It means the way you're interpreting it has changed, but the signal, consciousness itself, still exists, untouched, undisturbed. So why does this matter? Because if consciousness isn't created by the brain, then we are so much more than our physical bodies. We're connected to something deeper, something vast and mysterious that goes far beyond anything we can measure or observe in a lab. Yet, this understanding changes everything. Suddenly, life can be seen not as a random occurrence, not just as a flash of awareness in an otherwise meaningless universe. Suddenly, life has depth, purpose, and continuity. In this light, the symbols we encounter, whether sacred, ancient, or new, become reminders of the mystery and wonder that underlie our shared human experience. Life isn't merely a series of events, it's a journey with meaning woven through it, inviting us to explore the connections that bind us to each other and to whatever we perceive as the source of it all. And this doesn't have to mean religion in a traditional sense, whether you see it as a connection to a divine source, an alignment with the universal energy, or a unity with the natural rhythms of existence itself. The deeper realization remains life is part of something more profound, interconnected, and enduring. Think about it. really think about what you are. You are a human being, a conscious entity born into a universe that we barely understand, suspended on a planet spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour in a vast cosmic vacuum. Somehow, through a series of events so improbable it almost defies imagination, here we are. Each of us a collection of atoms borrowed from stars that exploded billions of years ago, somehow coming together to form sentient life capable of asking why. Now let's go even deeper, beyond what we usually accept as reality. Consider the nature of time itself. We move through it like a current, yet science and experience both hint that time might not be what it seems. It might be an illusion, a trick of perception. How else do we explain prophetic dreams, moments when we glimpse events before they unfold, or strange synchronicities that line up in ways that seem impossible, as if reality itself is bending to a pattern we can't see? Think about déjà vu, that uncanny sensation of reliving a moment, a flash of recognition for something we are experiencing for the quote-unquote first time. And what about near-death experiences, where people report seeing a whole lifetime every moment as if all time exists at once? These aren't just random quirks or glitches, they're signposts. Reminders that what we experience as now is only one frame in a much larger reel. It's almost as if our lives here are just a brief interlude, a single note in an endless song. We can sense it, the feeling that our time here is but a blip in an eternal experience, an infinite story of which this life is just one chapter, one that hints at something far beyond the physical world and the ticking clock. And yet, despite the sheer absurdity of it all, we walk around convinced we know the answers. We place so much faith in our five senses as if they're somehow capable of capturing the full depth of reality. As if what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell could possibly explain the mysteries of existence. We think we're so wise, so humble, when in reality we're like ants in a vast cathedral, trying to comprehend the architecture of a universe we only barely perceive. Our confidence is almost laughable. Here we are floating in the void on a rock governed by forces we don't fully grasp, with senses that are limited, flawed, and easily deceived. And yet we think we've got it all figured out. And yet mainstream science tells us to ignore this possibility. Why? Because admitting that consciousness might exist beyond the brain, beyond the physical, would mean rewriting the rule book. It would mean stepping into a realm that we can't control, can't dissect, and can't explain through traditional means. It would mean facing the fact that life, reality, and existence itself are not as cut and dry as we thought. But here's the thing, consciousness has always been bigger than science, bigger than biology. Every culture, every ancient civilization has had its own understanding of it, that it goes beyond the material. They knew there was something more, something unseen that connected us all. And in our rush to dissect, explain, and control, we've lost that understanding. We've forgotten that consciousness isn't something to be captured in a test tube or reduced to brainwaves on a screen. It's something we're part of, something that moves through us, that we tap into. If consciousness isn't confined to the brain, then we're part of something universal, something that exists beyond time and space. And if that's true, then death isn't the end, and life isn't just a random accident. We're like drops in an ocean of consciousness, each one of us expressing a part of the whole, a fragment of something boundless. This perspective demands that we reevaluate everything we think we know about life, about ourselves, and about what it means to be human. Because if consciousness exists independently, then we're not just bodies with minds. We're expressions of something infinite, something that can't be measured, dissected, or pinned down. And again, this isn't about religion. It's not about spirituality in the traditional sense. It's about a raw, fundamental truth that goes beyond dogma, We are conscious beings participating in a conscious universe, and the brain is simply our interface with it. So what does this mean for us? It means we're more connected to each other, to life, and to the universe than we're led to believe. It means that the limitations we've placed on ourselves, on our potential, are artificial. They're constructs of a materialistic worldview that fails to capture the full spectrum of what consciousness really is. It's time to let go of the idea that consciousness is just brain activity. Embrace the reality that consciousness is fundamental. It transcends the brain, that it's something we're all part of and that flows through everything. It may not be an easy truth. It may not be cozy or comforting for some, but it's real. And once you realize that, you're no longer bound by the limits of what you thought you were. You're free to explore, to experience, and to connect with something deeper, something infinite. So no, consciousness isn't just a byproduct of the brain. It's not some accidental byproduct of evolution. It's the source. It's the beginning and the end. And we, each of us, are just tiny expressions of that vast, endless awareness, here to experience, to learn, and to remember that we are more than just minds and bodies. Want to learn more? Grab my book, Mindfield, where every thought shapes your reality. Take what resonates and tuck the rest away for contemplation. Humanfluence, out.